Good morning, friends. A little housekeeping here before we start today's episode. I think it's incredibly important to bring this to everybody's attention. You're about to hear us talk to a gentleman named Mike who gave up time from his family, his life, his job to go help those in need from the hurricane. I want to share my feelings as well as Tacticon's feelings in saying thank you to individuals like Mike, to individuals like those boys over at the 118th, and many, many, many others who have given time out of their lives to go help people in need where the government has so actively failed. You are the bedrock that holds this country together. Individuals like you who help support the effort, who send funds, who send resources, and individuals like Mike in the 118th who are actually out there doing work, getting information, finding people in need, actually driving convoys of resources out to people. And the world is a better place for individuals like you. Mike didn't necessarily want to benefit monetarily from this podcast and plug his own socials because he feels like he just wanted to spread the good word, and he seems like an absolutely stand-up gentleman from the conversation that we had. But unfortunately, I'm a dirtbag, so I'm gonna plug his socials down below. Go check out Mike, go support him, go take a training class from him, learn from him and the knowledge that he has. In the links down below, you will as well find links for NAGR and GOA to help support fighting the Second Amendment fight in one of the better ways, the dudes who are actually taking these tyrants to court and saying, you're being unconstitutional towards my rights as a human being. And finally, we are discontinuing some of our shirts, so last call chance if you wanted to score on some of those designs before they're gone forever. Anyways, enjoy the show. Thank you for watching, and thank you for being you. We love you. Alrighty. Welcome to the 2A Procast, everyone. My name is Nolan, this is Jake, and this is Tackett, and we are joined here today by Mike VonSteuben, correct?
Yes, sir, that's me.
All right, brother. So one of my good friends reached out to me, and he said you were a man to talk to with what's going on the grounds with the hurricane. He said you ran into FEMA, and you have a lot of information of what's going down, just like on the ground floor and the whole situation down there. So if you want to give yourself a little introduction for our guests or our viewers and let them know what you're all about and what you do and just a little backstory on you.
Certainly. Well, first off, thank you, gentlemen, so much for having me on. It's, I was not expecting any of this to happen when I decided about a week ago with my guys to go and just see what we could do to help out with hurricanes. So I'm still kind of in shock at what's happened over the last week. But anyhow, so everybody, my name is Mike VonSteuben. No, it's not my real name. My real name's a bit more boring than that, so we're sticking with this. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I served from 2016 to 2024. No combat tours. Joined a little late for that. I'm not quite that cool. But my MOS is 0621 field radio operator. I served in several units, most notably 2nd Anglico. And I'm only really bringing that up because the way that Anglico operates and the way that I worked with the guys in that unit played into what happened last week and how I conducted myself with my team. So just get that out of the way. Got out in the Marine Corps in February, and I have a day job, and on the side I run a small tactical training business called VonSteuben Training and Consulting, where I teach team leader classes, field craft, and stuff like that. So that's me.
Awesome, man. All right.
And crayon culinary. Yeah, do like crayon culinary events.
Those keep in the field. They're better than them.
Now, I mean, I feel like the most poignant and important question is, what is your favorite flavor of crayon?
That's really the only reason I got on this podcast.
Green.
Fair enough. Okay. All right, brother. Well, let's go ahead and jump in. Tackett, you've been doing the most research on this since you're making an episode about it. So let's just jump right in.
I'm the most interested, I think, in like kind of what your interactions were with FEMA for the most part. I think I've been able to prove that at least the cover story for all that stuff is that FEMA and local authorities are, they're trying to stockpile everything and kind of control the chaos and ensure who gets what. But I feel like that's probably not the truth. I'm just interested to know what your experience was on ground as far as like, is FEMA interdicting shipments? Are they actually confiscating things? Like,
sure. So I will say that a lot of the conjecture about FEMA setting up roadblocks and whatnot is just straight up false. FEMA, for one thing, doesn't have the manpower in the AO to do that sort of thing. They are pretty much purely in an administrative role as far as what I was able to see. The roadblocks that we encountered in the area were mostly run by sheriff's deputies and, towards the end of the week, state troopers, and right as I was leaving, National Guard. So the first time I encountered FEMA was on Wednesday in Burnsville, and that wasn't really an encounter. It's just the first time I saw them in the AO. So just to give a little bit of a rough timeline going into this, the hurricane hit, just for everyone to be on the same page, the hurricane hit the 26th through 27th of September, and recovery efforts began almost immediately, although they weren't really beginning to be effective until Sunday. On Monday, I made the decision with my guys to look into the possibility of going. We did some intel preparation of the battle space. Tuesday, we decided to go. Wednesday, we actually pushed out. And I want to correct my earlier statement. The first time I saw them was on Thursday, because that's when we were actually pushing north from our staging area in Spartanville, South Carolina, into North Carolina. So when we first saw FEMA, we were moving into Burnsville, and we were sort of functioning as in a sort of a mobile reconnaissance type of role. We were looking for where we could be put to use. And we pulled into the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center at Burnsville, because it's, for those who don't know, the EOC is a big coordinated dispatch center. I believe every county has one. And it's where all the guys who are coordinating everything go. It's where the most information is. So we figured we'd go there to see what the situation was. As soon as we pulled into the parking lot, we saw a big white vehicle with FEMA marked on it and a satellite dish on the roof. So we noped out of there real quick because we'd heard a lot of rumors of what FEMA was doing. Hadn't seen anything confirmed, but we figured it'd be best to just keep our distance. I try to avoid feds just based on principle.
That's a good
that
call
was the
overall.
first time we encountered them. And yeah. Anyhow, that was the first time we encountered FEMA. There was only one other time which we believe that we encountered FEMA. And I'm not going to put forth my opinion of what it was. I'll just first say what we saw, what we heard, and what led us to the conclusion that it was most likely FEMA that we were dealing with. Our basic function in the area was logistics support. We found a church in Spruce Pine, North Carolina, that was distributing supplies. Well, they were collecting a lot, and they were trying to coordinate getting it out to places that needed it, smaller distribution centers, individual homes, et cetera. So we were running convoys out of there, helping them get those supplies to where they needed to go. On Friday, that was Saturday. On Saturday, October 5th, we did a convoy in the morning where we left from there with 11 vehicles, including our guide on a motorcycle, and we headed towards Pensacola, North Carolina, which had just been opened up from the north. So Pensacola is a very small community that had been almost completely cut off until I believe on Friday. The access was available from the south. There's only two roads going in, one from the north through Burnsville, the other one from the south. In order to access the road from the south earlier, we would have had to have taken like a 2-hour drive, and we had limited fuel, and so that we weren't going to be able to make the trip until the route from the north was cleared. Saturday it was cleared. We executed our convoy through some really, really treacherous roads, but we did make it there with all of our vehicles. We pulled up. Our guide, who had previously made contact with the fire department, they had requested supplies. And that's why we were bringing them there in the first place. He went in and to talk with his point of contact. There was a lot of activity there in the area. A lot of vehicles, not many of them marked government vehicles. They were just civilian vehicles as far as we could tell. But there was a lot of activity. So there wasn't also a lot of shoulder on the road for us to pull off of. So we were kind of getting in the way. So I called my second Vic on the radio, and I told them, my second team leader, who was one of the guys in the group that came with me, we were communicating. He had like half the convoy. I had the other half. And I told him that I was going to take my half of the convoy and push up the road a little ways to find a place to pull off so we weren't in the way. So the interaction with FEMA actually happened with my other man in his vehicle. I interacted with the alleged FEMA agent over the radio, actually. So I'm sitting up there, and this lady that my other driver described as basically I guess exactly what you'd expect a bureaucrat to look like. Ellen DeGeneres with brown hair. That's what he said. So yeah, brown hair and a deep voice for some reason. I actually mistook her for a dude on the radio. She came up to him and told him like something to the effect of, "We're not taking supplies here. You guys need to go away and take all this stuff back north to Burnsville." And he like told me that over the radio. And he said, Vic wanted us to stick to, we're being told that we need to take this stuff back. And I asked him to confirm it. And then I hear this other voice, which ain't him, which I thought was a dude. Turns out it was allegedly a her. It came over the radio and said to me that, "Hey, this is the logistics coordinator for this site. You need to take this stuff back to Burnsville. We are doing inventory, and we are not going to take any more supplies until Monday." And I said, "Roger that, sir. Is there any other distribution centers that we can take these to in the area?" I didn't get a response. I don't know if they had already just mic dropped my dude's radio and went back inside, but I never heard from that individual again. So first off, logistics coordinator. This is a small town with a volunteer fire department and not really a whole lot going on there. That's not really a billet or a job description that I really see in small fire departments like that, and I do work in a few of them occasionally. So right off the bat, that's someone who's probably not from the area. Later on, my other driver said he was talking to some guys who were locals who were moving supplies out from the fire department. And they told him that FEMA had moved in earlier that day or yesterday and had taken over the place. And so that combined with, this lady who didn't seem like she was from there, her voice didn't have the local accent that everyone else had that we'd interacted with over the last several days, and had a weird job title and a lanyard around her neck. Most likely FEMA is what we determined there. So that was pretty much the extent of our interaction with FEMA that we know about. Now, what we did there is we didn't just take our stuff, go back and go, "Yes, ma'am, sir," thing. We didn't just turn around and do that. We wanted to distribute our stuff, so we hung out. We set up cardboard signs on our trucks listing what we had, and some people came to pick it up. My second Vic got rid of his entire load. I got rid of about a third of mine, and ended up having to take the rest back. So that was the extent of our encounter with FEMA. So there's that. That's my experience. I never witnessed them confiscating supplies from individuals. I never witnessed them manning roadblocks because they just don't have the manpower to do so. And I didn't even witness law enforcement of any kind stopping vehicles and confiscating supplies. They were turning vehicles around at certain points because disaster tourism was actually a pretty big issue. Those guys actually got in our way once in a while and slowed down my convoys because they're leaning out the cars, taking pictures with their out-of-state plates, and they're clearly not here to help out with anything. So I understand the roadblocks that were there to an extent. We were able to get through most of them because we had a local guide on a motorcycle who knew the area and was able to, he was coordinating with people running the distribution centers like the fire chief, Chief Boone down in Pensacola. And they were requesting stuff. And in that case, we got through because we were carrying generators.
Right on.
Gotcha.
So that was in South Carolina, right?
No, that was in North Carolina. We started in South Carolina, and then we pushed north because South Carolina seemed to be okay for the most part.
That was honestly that was what I expected. It's just that once FEMA is involved, the common sense goes out the window, right? They've got to do inventory, so they can't take anything new, right? That makes total sense.
Yeah. So there's I've heard a couple theories because I posted pretty much that exact account of what happened on my Twitter, not thinking anything of it. And then next morning, holy shit, that went viral. So a couple of people had some theories. A few people had the same theory, and it made a little bit of sense to me. So there's a couple options. One, it's just bureaucratic red tape. They move in and they have to find out what they have. That's I could chalk this up to just bureaucratic incompetence and red tape easily, just based off my previous experience with, the military and whatnot. But the other theory that was put out was that FEMA's been under fire for not putting a whole lot of money towards the recovery effort here and saying that they're bankrupt and whatnot. So the theory that some people put forth, which I believe may have some merit, is that if they move into these public distribution centers and inventory the supplies, technically they can claim that they distributed so many millions of dollars worth of aid, even though it's all private donations that they just kind of yoinked mine now. And so that, I mean, I can't confirm that. I can't prove it at all, but I'd say that theory has merit.
And would you say the theory has merit just based on the fact that the narrative that they've been pushing wouldn't line up with the things that they were doing if they were to redistribute the millions of dollars worth of stuff? I'm just trying to clarify why they would, what would be the incentive behind that?
To show that they are doing something on the ground when they've been coming under a lot of bad publicity for not doing enough. So it's a way for them to claim that they're doing more with minimal effort, minimal funds, and minimal personnel committed to it.
He's not the only person making that claim. Also, that is a pretty common claim across some of these distribution points. Is that FEMA brought nothing but personnel, and then they're trying to take claim of all of the private volunteer stuff, and then put that on the dollar line to defend the administration.
But if they're not accepting the private donations, I guess my question is, why would they turn away their private donations under the guise of them actually wanting to make it seem like it's coming from them?
They're just doing inventory. Imagine if you were doing inventory in the warehouse and a new ship showed up,
Yeah.
Got it.
They can't count my extra blankets and heaters and charcoal that I brought. So now I just remembered. So I didn't have any other experiences with FEMA, but some of the people in the church that I was working with on the ground did have experiences with FEMA that they shared to me. Now, be mindful, this is a secondhand source to me. It's a tertiary source to you guys and everyone else listening. So take it with a grain of salt, understandably so. But what was told to me was that same day, the American Red Cross had been running not a distribution center, actually, just a shelter at the local high school, Mitchell High School in Mitchell County. And that same day, they sent they kicked all the volunteers who weren't Red Cross employees or workers out, and said they were doing an inventory of some kind as well. That was told to me by the pastor's wife of the church that I was running missions for. Also, FEMA came to the church and was talking to the ladies who were running the distribution center, trying to tell them that they needed to get all the people working there volunteering to record their volunteer hours and submit that information to FEMA so that they could get money. And they thought that was odd. And the thing is, everyone there is super busy. These ladies, and it was ladies coordinating pretty much all the distribution centers that I went to. I guess the men were busy doing road clearance and whatnot. But the ladies were just like, no, we don't have time for that. They're going 100 miles an hour. I come up to them and I'm trying to find out what we can do to help. She says one sentence to me, the lady in charge of this place says one sentence to me, and someone comes up and asks her a question. She quickly answers it, turns back to me, and then like 10 seconds later, someone else asks her a question, and that's just constant. So these ladies, they don't have time to record those volunteer hours. And that church was very well stocked with supplies. God bless the American people. There was so much coming in. And so we didn't have a shortage of, like, by the third day I was there was no longer a shortage of food or bottled water. We were then saying, don't bring that stuff, bring heating, bring blankets and whatnot. So they don't need the money. There's plenty of supplies here. And so another theory on that, if they record their volunteer hours and send that to FEMA, FEMA can then claim they have FEMA workers or FEMA volunteers doing X number of hours. And again, another way to make it look like they're doing something that they really just took credit for.
Yeah, they're almost like deputizing folks for the disaster relief effort.
Just embezzlement, you know?
Yeah.
It's just
Tell us what you're doing. Tell us what you have, and we'll note it. Yes. We're totally not going to take credit for it.
Bureaucrats never done that before.
I've certainly never. I would like to say in the Marine Corps, I've earned so many NAMs, Navy Achievement Medals for other people. So I've seen that happen in bureaucracy before.
So once what was kind of what was the final day that you had there, what was the last like few hours there before you ended up turning around? What was the decision really to turn around and head back? What manifested to make you guys say, okay, we're done here?
So that was actually planned out ahead of time. It was purely based off of how much time off of work me and my guys could take. Because we took unpaid time off of work to go and do what we did. And for me and one of the other guys, we also have a bunch of kids at home, and I'm still on the road. I'm not home. I'm doing on the road work for my work this week, and so I won't be home to my family until Saturday. And so I'm already away from my family for a week and a half. It was just a simple matter of we have other obligations to back home that we just can't we can't get out of. So it was pre-planned. It's not like something happened and we said we can't do anything here. We're leaving. Far from it. We wish we could have stayed much longer and continued helping those people because we were making a difference. We could see that we were clearly being helpful. It was just time for us to go, and it was planned ahead of time. Nothing stopped us and sent us home.
Out of the 100% of items that you guys brought for relief, what would you say you were able to dispatch to the community, like as a percentage? And then what did you have to bring back with you?
Oh, for the one where we had to turn back?
Well, just in general, what did you leave
I'd
with?
say that that was the only convoy that I came back with stuff. Every other time we unloaded our entire load and came back empty. So that specific convoy, I'd say we were able to offload about 30 to 40% of the stuff that we brought. And the rest of it had to come back with us and go to another community later on Monday, I believe is when the next convoy went out. But that was after me and my guys had left and other guys were taking the fight.
What are they?
But if you want stats on what we moved, I have that.
Yeah, that'd be cool to hear.
All right, I may have written in my other notepad. Bear with me. It was pretty freaky out there. But just off of memory, we did 6 resupply convoys. We dropped off 9 loads. By loads, I mean truck, as in pickup truck, because that's just what we were driving. 9 loads of equipment at points of distribution. 9 loads at individual homes. We did 2 reconnaissance missions in 2 neighborhoods to see if people needed help there and if the roads were clear. We did 39 wellness checks for the community. We offloaded 1 helicopter's worth of supplies. We supported ATV scouts on a short range convoy where they were going up into like the really, really hard to reach roads and whatnot. And we were just behind them with a truck and trailer load of supplies. They would go see if anyone needed stuff and they would come back to us and grab what they needed off the truck, go deliver it to them. And on top of that, I was coordinating with some other volunteers because I was posting just enough on Twitter to see so people could see what we were doing. And other volunteers came in afterwards and actually came in while we were there and supported that.
Would you say that you were
that's a rough summary of what we did?
Were you primarily offloading to kind of hubs where people were gathered that needed assistance, or were you actually going home? I heard you said you made some wellness calls in some actual homes, but as a percentage, like how many people, how much were you offloading to those actual distribution centers, and how much were you going kind of like house to house just to see what people needed?
It was half. We did 9 loads to distribution centers over the course of 6 convoys, and 9 loads to individual homes. The homes themselves were requested by other members of the family who couldn't get in, or it was like a wellness check where we checked on someone and they were there and they needed stuff and we had it with us.
Gotcha.
I got a question. I think that's not necessarily, we don't have to bag on like local authorities or FEMA or stuff anymore, but as far as like communication solutions, what were you and your team using? Did you guys have that stuff pre-planned? And then what did you see on ground as far as local comms? Obviously power, cell phones, those kind of things were down. For people that could expect this to happen later on, what's your best advice for like a ready kit as far as communications? Like what do you need and who are you talking to?
So we had, I had 2 radios in my truck. I had a CB radio, Bearcat 980 SSB, and I had a Baofeng AR152, which is a 10-watt handheld radio. It looks exactly like a PRIC 152 at first glance, but it's got 10 watts of power instead of 5. You can't encrypt it. It's only like a $60 radio. And I had that hooked up to a roof antenna on my truck. The guy in my second vehicle, he had a Jeep, and he had a dedicated mini mobile hooked up that was pushing 25 watts. We were using MURS, MURS frequencies, which is a list. It's a couple of, I believe it's 6 channels that have designated frequencies that don't require a license to talk on. So it's license-free communications because we're not hams, and so we can transmit on those. It was clear enough. I would have used my CB more if we encountered people with CB radios, but we really didn't. I used it for SIGINT on the way in because if there's because some old school truckers still have them in their vehicles, and so we'd come to like a stop on the highway where the traffic's backed up, and I would call ahead on channel 19, the trucker channel, and just say, "Hey, what's this traffic buildup on 26 northbound?" And some trucker would say, "That's a stalled vehicle. They're pushing it to the side of the road." SIGINT. So, but that's the most that I used my CB. My CB actually, because it's a lower frequency, it has a taller antenna. Just, I'm a radio operator by trade. I won't explain the technical details of that, but lower frequency generally equals bigger antenna. So, and I had to take that off my truck because on the very first convoy that we actually did, going off the beaten path into like a smaller community that the road had just been cleared, I noted there was just a ton of low power lines and just straight up down power lines. I can't even tell you how many I drove over. And as we were going in, my CB antenna was going ting, ting. I was getting a little nervous, and one of them came out of nowhere. Like I didn't see this one until it was too late, and I went wham, and I was a little concerned. We got to where we were, and I stepped out of the truck, and my CB antenna it's a magnet mount, and it's a really, really strong magnet. It had fallen over, but it was still on my truck, so I didn't lose my $150 antenna. But I immediately at that point said, no, this thing's done. I unscrewed it. I put the cap on the hub. I tossed it in the bed of my truck, and there it stayed for the rest of the week. So the Baofeng radio that I had was what we mainly used to talk locally. We had a Starlink with us for strategic comms, for just situational awareness, and so I could talk to some of my guys who were back home who were running basically a remote intel section for me. We'd go into an area, I'd have some requests for information, I'd send it up to them, and 30 minutes later I'd have what I needed. So we used Starlink for that. We could only use it at the halt. The Starlink system was donated to us from someone, I don't remember who, in Florida. God bless them. That was extremely useful because there was no cell service in most of the areas we were going. So, and I handed that off to someone else who was still in the area when we left on Sunday. So there were those. As far as other people coming in, because I only had 3 guys and 2 vehicles out there. We had multiple vehicles in the convoy that we were running because there's other people there who are also volunteering to take stuff. And we just de facto, because we have the communications capability, we're the ones organizing it and coordinating the convoys getting out. And so we would have some people showed up with radios, but they're all FRS radios, which is just Walmart walkie-talkies. FRS stands for Family Radio Service, and those little bubble pack walkie-talkies you get from Walmart, that's what those are. They have 20 channels. They probably have more. They have a set number of channels. Each one has a set frequency. You can only change the channel number on those radios, but I can look up what the FRS channel frequency assignment is, and I can program my Baofeng radio to talk to it. So it worked out. So because I could make my radios talk to the walkie-talkies. So when we had guys like that in our convoy, we would pick a channel, we'd set our radios to talk to it, and then they could at least hear. They couldn't transmit very far, but it was enough for a convoy. So that's mainly what we dealt with.
How are you guys getting the intel of where to go and what to distribute? And how were your guys back home getting that intel? Who were they communicating with primarily?
Sure. So we actually had to find most of that out on our own. So I was coordinating with another group that was out there doing the same thing we were, called the 118th, which is mainly organized on Twitter, interestingly enough. They had guys on the ground before we left, and we did 2 full days of IPB, of intel preparation of the battle space, before we went out. And what I did was, as soon as I identified that there was a possibility that we may be able to go out there and help, I went to my guys and I said, okay, I picked a dude. I was like, you're in charge of mobility. You research the routes. Here's a couple of websites to see what roads are open. Get us a primary and an alternate route. I went to another one of my guys and I said, I want you to look at the security picture. try to look at news reports and whatever you can get on the open source intel side of things, and try to find what the crime reports are, try to find out what the law enforcement response to that is and how that would affect us, checkpoints, curfews, etc. And so on and so forth. And I just delegated stuff like that. We did 2 days of intel prep before we left. And while we were out there, that continued because I wasn't able to take my whole crew. Some guys couldn't get off of work. And so they didn't sit on their hands, do nothing. They kept running the intel picture for us, just looking up whatever they could find open source. And the way that worked was they didn't really tell us where to go for distribution centers, because by the time that information gets to the internet, that intel is stale. It's expired. It's not really actionable at that point. So we kind of had to do all that on the ground ourselves, just talking to people. What the guys remotely were able to do for us was, as soon as we would do some human work, we'd talk to people on the ground, find out where distribution centers were, where the need was, first off, and we'd determine where we were going to go next. And Wednesday was like the main day that we did. Thursday was the main day that we were doing the reconnaissance to find where we were going to operate out of. And what we would do is, when I would identify where we were going next, I would hop on the net with my guys back home, and I tell them, we're going to move into such and such counties. I need the ham radio repeater frequencies so we can listen to those as we're going through, because those are just gold mines of information, of just the local hams spreading info about where the collection centers are, what roads are out, etc. I need that. I need more info about the routes, security posture, etc. And within about 30 minutes, my guys would get it to me, as well as any other specific requests I had. But as far as where the distribution centers were, we had to figure that out ourselves. Just stop and talk with people. We dropped off our first load of supplies because we came in with some stuff that was donated from my church, and we dropped that off at the United Methodist Church in Spruce Pine on Thursday. Those people were very grateful. We sat down with them. I was getting more information about the town. I asked them what their distribution plan was, and they were a very small collection center. They said they're pretty much just going to open it up and have people from the church and wherever just come in, put signs out. And they weren't very organized. I asked if they had a list of people who needed help. They said no, but this other church does, the First Baptist Church in Spruce Pine. So we took note of that. They gave us like 2 other places as well. So we went to the First Baptist Church, and I saw how they had a big operation going there. And it wasn't just a church. There was another volunteer organization there, Baptist Relief Mission or something. I wish I could remember the name, but I remember they all had yellow hats and shirts and whatnot. And they had a very organized show going on. So we pulled in, we parked, and I went inside and offered my assistance to the lady inside. And this is where sort of my background comes into play. Have you gentlemen ever heard of Anglico before?
I have not.
Not me.
Okay. Anglico is a Marine Corps specialty type of unit. It's an acronym. It stands for Air and Naval Gunfire Liaison Company. It's back when Special Operations Capable was a thing. It was one of the Marine Corps Special Operations Capable units. And our whole purpose is with a bunch of forward observers, JTACs, and radio operators, me. And the whole point of that unit is to send liaison teams of like 4 to 8 dudes to work with a foreign military or another branch of the U.S. military, like the Army, and liaison with them to see how we can bring Marine Corps air support, gunfire, artillery support, naval gunfire support to their fight, because they don't know how to call for fire using our stuff, at least not as efficiently as we do. So that's like the whole point, is working with other militaries and coming to them and going, hey, we're from the U.S. Marine Corps. We have this much stuff that we can bring to support your fight. How can you employ us? And we'll coordinate with the other folks that we have who got the big guns. So a lot of working with foreign military, foreign soft units and whatnot. And so that was, and again, no combat, just a lot of training, a lot of actual working with these guys during exercises. But that's the mindset I had going into it. And one of the things that Anglico has is a capabilities brief that anytime we work with these people, it's a PowerPoint presentation, because of course it is, that just lists, here's what we bring to your fight, here's how we can support you. And so I pretty much did a very, very compressed version of that when I walked into the place. I had a notepad, so I looked professional, like I was in charge of something. I had a ball cap. I had this headset on, and I just walked in. I was wearing M81 pants and a plain black T-shirt. I didn't go in full LARP gear because no one wants help from a weirdo.
No one wants that guy.
But no. But M81 pants was I thought was fine. I thought that was enough. It was a way for me to be easily found, and it was. I was known as Mike Camo Pants amongst the people in the church there. So that's how they would refer to me. Oh, hey, Camo Pants! Like, hey, what's up? Anyway, so I walked in and I asked for who was running the church, who was running the situation there. I was here to help. They directed me to a very busy, very tired-looking lady. And I gave her basically a very short capabilities brief. I'm like, hello, my name is Mike. I'm from Jacksonville, North Carolina. I have a couple of volunteers with me in trucks. We're here to see if we can help you in any way. Like, we can transport supplies to people who need it. We can do scouting missions for you. We can do wellness checks. Would you like to use our help? And the answer was yes. So thank you so much. So, like, imagine you're in that lady's shoes. You're wore out. The disaster has been dragging on for like 5 days now, and then someone comes in and says, "Hi, I don't need anything from you, but I'm here to fix some of your problems. Can you use me?" That's essentially what it was. And so she got me in touch with another lady, also very tired, very overworked. God bless her. Was keeping track of where they had done wellness checks and where supplies needed to go. And the first thing they did with us was they sent us out on a scouting mission to go check out a neighborhood. And I quickly took down the address and I said, right, okay, what roads, what neighborhood you want to scout out? She said, these. They said that they were blocked off. We don't know for certain. Just go see if anyone in there needs help. I said, okay, thank you very much. We'll go take care of that. And I was gone. And then that was pretty much just kind of set the tone. That place was organized enough that we stayed there. We just ran resupply convoys using the First Baptist Church in Spruce Pine as sort of a patrol base, where we would come back, load up on stuff. Eventually, we had a local guide that they assigned to us, dude on a motorcycle, who would take us into the places that actually needed supplies. So that's how I understand. Sorry, a little bit of a long answer to how are we running intel, but that's how we figured out where to go. We just did it on the ground on the fly.
That was absolutely beautiful, man. That was better than what I was looking for. So that was beautiful, man. The importance of community cannot be understated. So that was beautiful, man.
Yeah, and these people, if I can just say, the people in this area are just amazing. Like, some of the best that America has to offer. They deserve all the support they're getting and then some. My guide on the motorcycle, I want to talk about him for a minute. I won't say his name to protect his privacy, but that man had lost, like, his home was pretty much destroyed. He was still somehow living in it with his wife, and he, by all rights, could have just put his head down, got inside of his head, woe is me, gotten in line for free food at any one of many distribution centers, and then just sulked and tried to get through it. But that's not the kind of man that this guy was. He hopped on his motorcycle. He started driving around to fire departments and churches and tried to see where stuff needed to go. And then he would come back and tell it to the ladies there. And then to us, we'd load up our trucks and take it there. And so just an absolute unit of a man who can lose that much and still be focused on not himself, on just helping out his community. It was awesome. And everybody there that I saw and worked with was like that. They're even high spirited about it. Like, so I was offloading a big semi truck that had come in with supplies with some of the people in there, and there was a dead rat in there. And one of the young ladies who was offloading supplies with us was joking, "Huh, I don't have to worry about rats in my house. They all got washed away." And everyone was just laughing. And I'm blown away how she could have, like, her house is freaking destroyed, and here she is laughing about it like less than a week later. These people are awesome.
It's kind of like that age-old adage: you can either laugh about it or cry about it, right?
Yeah. Hey, just real quick, gentlemen, admin note. On my screen, it says recording error. I don't know if y'all are seeing something on your end.
No, it still shows recording on mine, so it should be good.
Okay, cool. Good to go.
Would you mind saying that church name again? I got First Baptist Church. but I didn't get the end.
Yep, First Baptist Church in Spruce Pine, North Carolina.
Right on. Awesome sauce.
That was just saying for you, you have a low recording space, but I've got enough.
Okay, cool.
So I heard I got intel that you had a guide get arrested. Do you care to talk about that in any way, shape, or form, or give a little story on that?
Yeah, and that is the gentleman I was just telling you about. So
Oh,
that
okay.
happened. Yeah, that happened roughly the same time that we had the encounter with FEMA lady dude thing, and so what happened was we passed through a state trooper checkpoint on the way there, and he got us through it. But he had a little bit of a heated discussion with the trooper on the way in. Previously, we'd gone through a lot of local sheriff's department checkpoints, and we got through those no problem. He would say a few words to the deputy, and we get waved through. I think that's because he knew the guys, had a better relationship with him. The trooper is not quite so much. And the state trooper, just based off of what I heard, the reason was for roadblocks was to keep the disaster tourists out of the sketchy areas so that they wouldn't slow down the important traffic and they wouldn't get stuck and need to tie up search and rescue resources to get them out of there. And I did see disaster tourists out there in that area, and they did get in our way a bit. So that has merit there. Eventually, like apparently on our way in, we were halted there. He said the word generators. And that was the magic word because that trooper had specific instructions to let through anybody bringing a generator because they actually needed it down there. So we get through that first checkpoint, and my vehicle like pulls up next to his, and the trooper talks to me. He says, like, just so you know, I'm not trying to be a jerk here. I have instructions to only let generators through. And like he was like explaining himself to me, and I'm like, no, you're good, dude. I know how that works. And he said, I'm not trying to, cause an issue here, but it just seems like he, pointing to my guy, might be making it a bit of an issue. And so I guess he was a little short with him because this dude, motorcycle guy dude, was pretty no nonsense. He was like, we need to take this here. I have a mission. Chief Boone in Pensacola said we need to bring these supplies to him, and by golly, we're going to get them to him, whether you like it or not. He said something like to that effect to this troopy. And so anyhow, we went through, and there's actually a video of us going through that checkpoint that from the dash cam of my other guy's Jeep that I posted on Twitter earlier yesterday. That was in the spirit of fairness to the trooper, just to be clear, this is what that roadblock looked like. This is probably why he was there. Anyhow, so we go down to there. The whole shenanigans with allegedly FEMA happened, and in the middle of all that, our guide took off back towards Burnsville, back north. And we didn't know why. He didn't coordinate with any of us. He didn't have a radio. We didn't. So, and that was the last we saw of him. We thought it was weird that he would just abandon us like that. I don't know why he was going someplace. I think he was going to go check on another distribution point while we were trying to offload our stuff, because he was all over the place. He wasn't coordinating just us. There was other guys that he was moving around places. So I imagine that's what he was doing. And the arrest happened when he was coming back through said checkpoint. And I wasn't there for any of this. I only have the information from what he said in the video. I now have a full length video of him talking about it, not a video of the arrest, of him talking about the experience, but I haven't had a chance to watch it because it's 12 minutes long. And it was sent to me today while I was at work, and so I hadn't had a chance to review it yet. But from that 2-minute clip that I put up on Twitter, it just sounds like he was saying that essentially he came back through and the trooper was going to let him through, but told him that we weren't going to be allowed to come back through in the morning, just to give him a heads up. And guy was like, well, Chief Boone said we need to bring in more kerosene, so we're coming through whether you like it or not. And apparently he and he took offense to that. So he apparently, according to dude's account, pulled the key out of his motorcycle, arrested him for I forget what the name of the charge was. It's in the video. It's something about resisting a public official. He was put in the jail overnight. I think his wife bailed him out for $500, and he was out on Sunday. But that was after me and my guys had already left the AO, so I didn't see him after he took off when we were in Pensacola. That's all I know about the arrest. So admittedly, he was being a little bit of a no nonsense attitude with the troopers, and I guess he didn't like that. So
Well, he had lost his
that's
home. And he
that's
had
what I
been
know.
working his ass off. He had a right to be, you
Yeah.
know. And he gets arrested for
Yeah.
resisting arrest.
Then
and
they charge him
put
$500
in jail.
bail.
They have no power or money or time to do anything else, but they got people at the jail.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Along the lines of that, have you were you witness to? Was there anybody out there doing anything nefarious, any looting, anything of that nature?
Not early on, and it's actually interesting because I'm posting updates on Twitter to show what we're able to accomplish and try to get more volunteers in the area. And one guy replied with, "Hey, I don't have. If someone can give me a ride into the area, I can help provide armed security." And I'm just like, no, go. No, go live out your LARPing fantasy somewhere else. Not here. No, you're a liability. No, we don't need armed security. Dude, everybody here is armed. Everyone's open carrying handguns. Literally everyone. In full view of the cops. The cops don't give a damn. And it was awesome. So there we started to hear reports of crime later on. So initially, actually, if I can go back a little bit, there was some reports on, I think, Sunday and Monday in the Asheville area of rampant looting and whatnot, but that got squashed pretty quickly. By the time I went through Asheville on Thursday, as I was passing through to where I was going, Asheville seemed like it was under control. Airplanes were coming in and out of the airport. Cops were pulling people over for speeding. The Chick-fil-A was up and running. And so it looked mostly back to normal at that point. So we didn't hear any other reports of looting or burglaries until Friday, Saturday. Saturday, Sunday. Saturday, when we were moving into Pensacola, we had heard from someone in Hendersonville, admittedly not from the area, but knows people in the area, that there were reports of sexual assaults and some attempted mild looting in that area because it was so remote. And so that's a secondhand source to me, a thirdhand source to you. Take that for what it is. But when we got to Pensacola, that was the first time I saw rifles openly carried. A couple of citizens in the vicinity of the fire department saw at least two long guns, two ARs. One looked like a PCC of some kind. Obviously, not a law enforcement dude, not a law enforcement weapon. Some private citizen's AR. That was the first time I saw anything like that. So if the locals are carrying long guns openly during the daytime, that's probably an indication that there might be some merit to the reports of crime in this area. And while we were out there, at one point when had my truck parked out by the side of the road, with a sign up trying to get people to take our supplies so we wouldn't have to bring them all home, we were out there by ourselves, just me and my A driver with my truck. And at that point, that's the only time I pulled my rifle out of my truck, slung it, and just kept it there on me until someone else from the convoy came up to us, and then I took it off, put it back in the truck because safety in numbers. I already had my handgun on me. No one's probably going to try anything against four dudes. So that's the limit of that. Sunday morning, we had some locals tell us that there was incidents of attempted looting or attempted burglaries inside of Spruce Pine itself, not even in remote farmhouses, but inside the town of Spruce Pine. Someone said that they actually came back to their home during the day and found that it had been looted. Another lady told us that some people had tried to break into their barn in the middle of the night, and her husband engaged them, actually shot at them, and drove them off. So that was starting to pick up right as we left. Wasn't a huge concern while we were there, but we were cautious. And when we were sleeping during the night, we had an armed guard. We did a fire watch while dudes were sleeping, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah. What did the curfew look like while you guys were out there?
In name only, pretty much. When we got there, when we first pushed in on Thursday, we had heard from a few people that there was a curfew from 8 to 8 or 8 to sunrise. And so we thought, okay, we just won't go out after that time. We'll stay here at the church. We'll just bivouac in our vehicles. But then 8 p.m. came, and later that night, while I was on fire watch, a couple of vehicles came in and asked where they could park for the night, and I directed them, the truck pulling ATVs, a big box truck full of supplies. They came in like during the night, and these are just normal people. And my second vehicle actually showed up at about 10 p.m. on Thursday as well. So if the curfew was being enforced, it wasn't very rigidly. It was a very porous curfew, and we didn't hear anything about any curfews for the rest of the time that I was out there. So that's what that was. We did see some cops driving around slowly during the night, but no, that was it.
You guys were primarily sleeping in your vehicles as far as pretty much every night that you guys had to be out there. Were you primarily in your vehicles, or did you end up staying in some of the places like the churches that maybe had a spot to sleep in?
No, because the church that we were operating out of didn't really have a space for us, and we were fine with that. So because we had prepared fully to be completely autonomous, we went into this with the mindset of we are going to bring literally everything we need, so we don't have to drain any of the local supplies or resources to support us. I don't want them to help me help them. So we brought everything. We brought the ability, like we slept either in or around the vehicles. We brought sleeping bags and tarps and such. I brought enough fuel in with me so that I wouldn't need to, even if the gas stations were open, I wouldn't have to take any of that locally. And I had enough fuel with me, like on the way in, every time I saw a gas station, and every time my tank got down to 3/4 of a tank and I saw a gas station, I topped out. So that as soon as I got to where I couldn't buy gas anymore, I would be fine. I'd have as much fuel as possible. So I had my 2007 Toyota Tacoma, and I had 5 NATO jerry cans, which are 5 gallons apiece. So in addition to the roughly 15 gallons in my tank, I had another 25 gallons in sealed metal NATO jerry cans, which are awesome. Some of the other guys who came in later brought the plastic ones that you can get at Walmart, and I saw at least 2 of those leaking while we were out there. And so we had to quickly put that fuel into vehicles before we had planned on it. So metal NATO jerry cans are awesome, guys. Just don't get them used. Get them like unissued surplus, because if you get them used, you don't know if some jackass put water in there and then there's rust and now your fuel's getting contaminated.
Affiliate links down in the description.
Oh goodness no. I'm trying really hard not to make money off of this, because that wasn't my intention.
Yeah.
Somehow, apparently, the post I made on Twitter about FEMA went viral and got 4 million views in like 3 days.
Wow.
And I went from 1,800 followers on Twitter to 12.6 thousand followers on Twitter in like a week. And I don't know what to do with this. Like,
Good for you, man.
Just keep doing you.
okay, I made a milestone. Like I made a post like, I guess I'm supposed to do a giveaway, but I don't have merch.
You gave away your time. You're good.
Yeah.
I want to kind of jump into what you were just talking about, how you brought all the stuff to be self-autonomous there. And what are some things that people can do for that preparation, for like, if they're going to go assist, what are things that they should have and prepare for to bring with them?
Okay. So just going down the list of all you need, just think of everything consumable. Water is the biggest one. You can get water locally. But the locals are having a hard time doing that. One of the big things we were distributing was water filtration kits. It was literally like Lowe's buckets with a Sawyer filter and some instructions on it on how to drill a hole in the bucket. And then people could go down to creeks and whatnot, or ponds or puddles, and get drinkable water, because the water service, even in the town, wasn't running, and it won't be running for nobody knows how long. So bring your own water. Maybe if you have a filtration system, bring that too, or just bring enough water to sustain yourself for the amount of time that you're going to be in there. Plan on 1 gallon per person per day, and you'll be good to go. That's what I did. I didn't ever have to go drink from a stream. I just took a big water jug, one of the, nothing too fancy. I grabbed it from Walmart on the way in. It was like an 8-gallon jug, and that was enough for me and my driver for the whole time we were there, plus the other water that I had in my canteens. So that's water. Next is fuel. Food. Actually, we'll hit food first. You know how much food you eat in a day. Plan on that for however long you plan to be there. Very few volunteers, I imagine, are going to go there indefinitely. Most people can only take so much time off of work. So just plan for how long you're going to be there and bring enough food. I had a bunch of almost expired MREs that I needed to use up anyway. So I was mainly just eating those. So,
that was going to be my next question. Was
yeah.
it the MRE route or was it the Spam and baked bush beans? You know,
the other guys who came with me like brought canned food and they were eating that. I was actually going off MREs because at this point they're kind of old, and it's because I had them from leftover from field ops and whatnot, and so it's a matter of use it or lose it. So
right.
I did that. That's the route I went. You can go a completely different route. Just make sure you don't have to rely on any local resources for your food. Preferably something you don't have to heat, because then that's another, the fuel for your stove or whatever is another thing logistically that you have to plan for. Fuel, obviously, I already mentioned that. Make sure that you have enough not only to get there and get out, but you also have enough to maneuver and actually do resupply missions or wellness checks, whatever it is. As far as an amount, I'd say at least 10 gallons in addition to topping off your tank constantly on the way in. At a minimum, more is always better. Don't count on resupplying locally. The gas stations were open when I was there, but they were only taking cash. And who knows when those are going to run out next.
Right.
So, the last consumable item that we had accounted for was electricity / batteries. So you're going to use batteries in flashlights. If you have radios, you need to be able to at least recharge those. If not, bring enough batteries to swap them out. I was using Baofeng AR152, and that thing has a very impressive battery life. Like, I didn't change the battery out the entire time I was there, and it was at like 1 bar at the end of it, and I had an extra battery ready to go. I had a backup radio that I hadn't really used, so I had essentially 3 weeks worth of batteries for one radio, just with that one system. So that's if you don't know how many batteries you need to bring for stuff like radios, just really easy. Take your radio, turn it on, set it on your counter in your house, and like check on it once a day and see how many days it takes for it to run down. And then subtract 1 day from that, and that's about the operational battery life of your radio.
Gotcha.
That's solid.
So you were saying you were running that Baofeng. How would a UV5R compare to what you were running?
So UV5R is half the transmitting power. That's 5 watts as opposed to 10. That's still a very capable radio. 1 or 2 guys that we worked with actually had Baofengs, and they're fine for the convoy ops. They're way better than the Walmart radios, the FRS ones. I actually have a funny story about those that I can tell in a minute. There was another group that came out that was trying to do the same thing we were, but they did not put nearly the amount of planning into it, and it showed. But anyhow. Baofeng UV5Rs are great. They're a great, really cheap solution on like Prime Day on Amazon. You can get them for $15 a piece. What I wish that I brought was like a 10-pack of Baofeng 5Rs to hand out to people in the convoys, because in the convoy, y'all, I'm sure I've done convoy ops at some point in the military. Every vehicle really needs one, or it gets really difficult really quickly. So like if we're changing direction, changing the plan at all, we had like 2 or 3 vehicles with no radio comms. They either had to just blindly follow us, or I'd have to dismount, run up to each vehicle and tell the driver what we were doing, go to the next vehicle, do the same thing, and then run back to my vehicle, and we'd keep going. So I wish I'd had more radios to hand out, which I could have programmed ahead of time. And I would have taken a bunch of Baofeng 5Rs for that. So for the 152, I will say that it's a pretty big, bulky radio. I'd say that's a great option for either a backpack or like sitting on the dash of your car, hooked up to an external antenna. If you don't want to take the time to modify your vehicle to actually mount a vehicle radio in it, just having a magnetic antenna with that radio with the adapter that you can actually connect it to the coax cable. And I had a trucker mic, one of the shoulder mic things that I had clipped into the ceiling of my truck, so I was able to use it like a traditional vehicle radio. For a radio the reason I don't say that it's good for like carrying around is because it doesn't have a belt clip, and it's the size and the bulk of a Prick 152. So it's fairly bulky. You need a pouch if you're going to carry it on your hip. Fortunately, I had one, so I was able to move mine from the dash of my truck disconnect the cable, slap a rubber ducky antenna on it, toss it in a pouch, and I was able to have comms when I was on foot. In the future, I would prefer to have just a separate radio for that. And I'd say one of the 8-watt. There's so many models of Baofangs, I can't keep track of them all. My choice, my recommendation for like one, if we can go to, I guess, to the tactical side for a bit, for one that you would use dismounted, or if you're going to have one radio that lives on your kit and all you can afford is a Baofeng, the Baofeng UV9R is what I go with. For this main reason that it's IP67 waterproof. It's still fairly compact. It has 8 watts of transmitting power, and the accessories screw on. The accessory port, it's not just the 2 little crappy pins that slide in and can wiggle out while it's on your chest rig and whatnot. It screws on like a Motorola radio. And so you put that sucker on and you don't have, it is the most reliable chest rig / plate carrier Baofeng setup that I've worked with. Now, obviously, if you can afford nicer radios than Baofangs, by all means, buy nicer radios. But if that's what you're working with, that's my recommendation for like a dismounted radio. The AR-152 is great to throw in a backpack or on your truck.
Oh, okay, that's what I was just going to ask. Like even over the 152, because I mean a 152 you can carry on your kit. It's a little.
You can. You need a bigger pouch, and it takes the same 2-prong connector that the 5R does, and I've had so many problems with those wiggling out. You can kind of mitigate it, but you have to use a Ranger band, and if you use a Ranger band, you also have to have a 3D printed exoskeleton over the top of it, so you're not holding down the push to talk.
Okay.
So it's a little bit more of a hassle.
Got it.
I don't think there's.
So is the 9 VR is what you're recommending?
The UV9R is what I recommend for a dismounted radio. The 5R, the 152, excuse me, is great for a low impact without drilling holes in your truck vehicle radio, or throw it in a backpack.
Well, it's good. That's good to know. It's a good advice, especially coming from a guy that regularly, that's done this for the last 8 years. So I appreciate the insight.
And I worked with the civilian side, the civilian tactical side with my training company for the last, I think, 3 to 4 years. And so I've done a lot of patrols with these radios. Actually, while I was still in the Marine Corps, I was using the Baofeng UV9R when I was an OPFOR role player. Because I had full license to do what I wanted with my kit and my outfit, as long as I was in the spirit of what I was doing, running OPFOR for Anglico. And so I had like Chi-Com chest rigs, and I had the 9R in there with my headset set up, and I was actually in the field with it for like a week at a time, in the mud, in the rain, and whatnot, and it worked. It was pretty dang reliable. So that's why I feel comfortable recommending it like that.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah, we had the little I don't even know what the fuck we were using, but we had little handheld radios in between. Like I was a Humvee gunner, and we had all the gunners had their own little comms, and it was mainly for, you would think that it would be to communicate other things between the gunners, and that's the initial intention of why we had them, was just to communicate between the gunners, like actual mission type stuff. What's that?
Was it black gear?
I cannot remember what the hell it was.
What color was it?
It was red. It was like this dark. It was like
this
dark. Well, it wasn't like bright red. It was like this dark red color, from what I can remember. And I only remember one of my buddies sent me a photo of us, and I had it like attached to I had it like sitting on the outside of my kit. I don't even know what the fuck it was, man. It could have been something off like eBay, for all I know. Yep. Anyway, but we would use it. I would say that the primary reason that we had it was to keep morale up. We just talk shit. Like that was like all we were doing was just talking.
I've definitely done that on some official convoys.
Talking shit.
Yeah, like, hey, Roberts, you back there? Yeah, dude. Hey, I fucked your mom. You know what I mean? Yeah. I was just
making sure.
Dude in the point vehicle is like, okay, let's go down the line. Everyone, pick your favorite, porn star or whatever, and then that would just go down through the convoy, and we would just hope that Gunny didn't have his own radio.
Yeah, it just got really quiet when someone said something like John Holmes. I'd be like, dude, that's a dude, man. Like,
you just gotta make sure you're talking platoon in the truck.
While we're on the topic of radios, if I may, I do have another story while I was out there that I think is. I told it when I did a Twitter Spaces yesterday, at the time of this recording, and I bring it up not because there was a group of guys who didn't do the level of preparation we did, and not to knock on them. I mean, they failed, but I want them to get better. So I'm not going to publicly shame them by revealing what group they were with. But they know exactly who they are. If they're listening to this, they know who they are. So the convoy that we did to Pensacola, we were going with another larger group, but they had more guys than us, and they're veterans. We clearly tell they're veterans. They all at least looked squared away, and they had decent looking kit. They were talking to the people at church, and they all had notebooks out. You know, most of them were fit. There were like one or two little chubby guys in there, but you know, for the most part, they looked squared away. And so I thought, okay, yeah, that's a good first impression. Maybe we'll be working with these guys. They identified themselves as out there to do search and rescue. Okay, cool, awesome. These guys have search and rescue experience. Right on. They brought ATVs out, and they were going to go do try to support the fire department in search and rescue stuff. Pretty impressive. Okay, we're getting ready to step on the convoy, and this convoy out there, I had very little prep time. We were in a rush. I didn't find out these guys are coming with us until like 10 minutes before we stepped. And so I'm scrambling to organize this convoy. And so I had my guy in the Jeep. I just pretty much assigned him to be like the liaison with them. And so I told him to go get their radio, tell them what frequency we were on so they could program their radios to talk to us. And because I saw these guys walking around with this radio that I hadn't seen before. It's a silver. It looked pretty cool. I couldn't identify it, so I'm like, okay, awesome. I don't know what that is. Is that some sort of handheld SATCOM system? I don't know. It looks dope. But these guys look squared away, so it's probably a better quality radio than our Baofangs. Anyway, so he comes up, he comes over the radio, my guy does, and tells me, all right, hey, these guys are on channel 18. I said, channel 18? FRS 18? And he said, yeah. Okay, you know what? Maybe they're doing the same thing we did, where we're just programming their radios to talk to FRS, because it's another license-free thing, admittedly with power restrictions, but it's another. So I thought, whatever. Okay, they're doing the same thing we are. Screw it. They have more radios than us. We'll just reprogram our 2 radios. We quickly looked up FRS 18, punched it in, and we pushed out. Convoy went relatively smoothly. Got a video of it up. For as stretched out as we were, it actually coordinated fairly well. These guys knew how to do a convoy at least. So we arrived, and we get there. We get told, no, you can't distribute the stuff. And these guys wanted to push out and do some recon on the ATVs. And the ATVs were co-located with me. Remember, I said I split the convoy in half. And so the ATVs were with me, and they were like, well, we're not going back. They're all gung-ho. They're like, yeah, we're going to go up into the hills, and we're going to go find people who need it. And I said, awesome. Hey, I have my truck full of equipment. You guys do that, and you come back to us, and we'll either put it on your truck, on your ATVs, and you can go take it out to where they are, or we'll drive up. I said, all right, sounds good. And I said, you guys have any maps? Because I was going to, I'm a radio operator, and I'm here to support. So I thought maybe I can do some battle tracking for them. I said, cool, you guys got maps there? And they said, no, our phones don't work out here. What? Hold up. At that point, wheels started turning in my head. Like,
you're like, oh, they're not joshing me. They're not playing.
Oh, that wasn't a joke. You don't have Google Maps.
Yeah, don't. I said, but you didn't download offline maps on your phone from Google, which I'd done. I didn't know I was going to be operating in this area before I came out. We just didn't have the time to print out maps for every county in the affected area for me to actually have topo of it. We just didn't have that in advance. So I was using my phone you can download, if y'all don't know this, folks listening, you can download offline maps on Google Maps. You can quickly Google how to do it. It's really, really easy. But that way you have access to it, and you can navigate if you lose cell coverage. And I had that. These guys didn't even have that. They didn't have no paper maps. They had no ATAC. They had nothing. And they just said, our phones don't work out here.
No MapQuest.
And they left.
Paper atlas from a truck stop.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I had an atlas, a road map atlas of the entire country, as well as a paper map of North Carolina in my truck, just in case all of my electronics went down. These guys their planning session for the recon patrol was, all right, we're gonna go that way. No.
Oh no. Oh no.
And I just like, well, okay, at least I still have radio contact with them. And eventually, I tried making contact with them, and I couldn't hit them. And I heard them trying to talk to each other, and it very quickly went to static. I'm just like, that's kind of weird. I'm pushing 10 watts, and they're going up the mountain. Unless they went on the other side of the mountain, I should still have comms with them. It's because it's a clear line of sight. And then one of the other guys who had not gone was walking around. He was holding his radio in his hand, and I looked at it, and I saw the screen. And the screen said 20. Not a frequency, 20. That's a channel ID. These guys just have FRS radios. This is a walkie-talkie. This is, and y'all don't know, like those are only able to push out 2 watts, I believe.
Yep.
Which is not a lot of power. And so these guys are walking around with straight up like full beard tattoos, and they've got Walmart radio. I'm sure it was the best that Walmart had to offer. But still,
that's some Ozark Trail.
They looked at the sticker on it that said 15 miles. You know, can communicate 15 miles, and they were like, "Damn, okay, I'll take that." And they just believed it. And so they were running around with FOS radios, no maps. They hadn't told people what route they were taking, where they were going, and they're just out there. And at that point, I'm just like, okay, you guys clearly aren't what I thought you were. And then, like, the cherry on top, one of the other guys who'd stayed back with us came up to my truck and was like, "Hey, man, you guys got water?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. I got my jug here. You can refill your canteen from." And he turns to his buddy and says, "Do you have a water bottle?" They didn't even bring water outside the wire. So that
Jesus Christ.
Well, they had the search part down. Just not the second half of it.
They can go get lost themselves too.
I thought you were going to say I took a closer look at the radio and it said Fisher Price. I was like, oh
yeah. Also, not only did they have those radios, they had changed the frequency on the channel on us and didn't tell me, so I wasn't able to, like, I quickly saw it and I changed it and I was able to get up with them. And then their leader was getting a little pissy with me because I was talking to his guys, and he said, "You know, they're not your responsibility; those are my responsibility." Like,
they don't need maps,
but I can talk to them and you can't. So anyways,
and look at you while he was sitting on the ATV and say,
yes,
maps. And well, did he turn back and look at you and when you asked him if he had a map and say, roads?
Yeah, I walk with God.
We don't need roads where we're going. I'm like, dude, I'm pretty sure that was a line from Back to the Future.
If I may, I want to talk to these guys real quick because I don't know if they're watching this or not. But gentlemen, all right, do an after action review. You can fix this. Don't let your pride get in the way of y'all getting better. I want you guys to get better. Do an AAR. Get better radios, do better planning and prep ahead of time. And next time I see you in the AO, I hope to see you guys killing it. But this story was way too much of a learning point for me not to share, because it contrasts how we put in like 2.5 days of just intel preparation of the battle space before we even left our home. And these guys clearly did absolutely zero. They thought, we're veterans. We know what we're doing. We'll just show up and we'll kick it out of the park.
Let me tell you something, dude. I watch, I don't know if you see like that Alone, the episodes of Alone on the History Channel where they like kick these guys out in the middle of nowhere and they got to live off the land. If you haven't seen Alone on the History Channel, it's pretty cool. But the guys that always fail the guys that always tap out,
it's the vets.
It's always the vets. They were like, oh, it's fucking special operations, Green Beret, Ranger, Sniper. I got this shit. And they're always like, it's like day 4. And they're like, I just can't find any food.
My back hurts.
I think a lot of it is just because the military, like wherever you go, for the most part, the regular army, I'm not saying that some of these other guys don't have specific training to survive, but the military teaches you to survive on the things that they also give you, right? So they're like, hey, here's a bunch of food and water. Now go kill people. And when you get out there and you don't have food and water, you're like, is anyone going to is there a supply drop? Like, where, what's going on, right?
Then you have Denise out there on day 7. She's like, I'm just happy to be away from the kids.
Right. She's doing great. Denise is doing great. That's the same thing we were joking about a couple weeks ago. We were like, we had no idea where we operated in country because you only had a map of your AO, like they were like, we'll get there. Somebody will have maps.
Somebody will have maps. Yeah, nobody's got a fucking map. I'm going to be completely honest with you from the radio standpoint. It hit me like a ton of fucking bricks. I just got to be completely candid here. I got to be honest. It's fucking embarrassing that when we're talking, you're like, what radio did you have? Did you have a? And I said, no, it was just like this dark red thing. Listen, these radios were we didn't have, like, the military didn't give them to us. I think they came in like a care package of like from somebody's wife, right? It was like, here's some walkie-talkies so you can talk to your friends since you're alone in the gun truck. And it was probably like just from one of the other gunner's wife in a care package, and she got it at the local PX or something. You know what I mean?
Guys like him were intercepting all your stuff back on the fob.
Well, not at 2 watts.
Doesn't sound like Haji's.
No.
It doesn't sound like Haji's. They're talking about John Holmes and shit. Like,
oh man, nah.
Yeah, we get a little carried
I don't know. Maybe somewhere out there you were doing a convoy and you passed a SIGINT listening post, and those guys, like, they're listening to the Taliban or whoever who's also using that kind of radio, and suddenly they pick up you guys doing that as your convoy rolls past, and they got a laugh out of it.
We kept blaming the local police in Maywan district for getting hit with IEDs. It was probably us on our fucking Fisher Price fucking walkie-talkies. You know what I mean? It's probably just us being like, hey, dude, if you could, like, marry, fuck, kill. And then the list goes, and they're like, oh,
it is. Wow, your guys' OPSEC is out of control.
It's gonna take me like a full week to get over the idea that, like, anybody came out there without some sort of, like, hard, even downloadable maps, right? Like, the phone battery might die, my phone might just drop and break, I might drop it in water. It's a massive flood zone, right? And, like, these dudes didn't have like the most basic analog, like, map and a compass.
Right. And when asked, like, hey, did you bring a canteen? They were like, no, dude, the Stanleys were out of stock, and I'm not buying a fucking Yeti. I mean, come on.
They just
and I'm gonna be honest with those guys. Their pride was getting in the way of them learning. Like on Sunday, right before I left, I saw one of them, and I was talking with him, and I mentioned to him casually that I was like, "Hey, did you know you could download maps off for viewing offline on your phone?" And he was like, "I heard about that," and I said, "Yeah, I could show you real quick how to do it." And he just went, "No," he just kind of walked away, like he didn't want to learn anything from me. Just okay, all right, you do you, man. I'm going home. I hope you don't get lost this time.
I know. I wasn't trying to teach you how to shoot a fucking azimuth off of a map. I was just trying to, like,
hey,
show
next
you how
time
to
you might want
download
to know how to come back from where you went.
Yeah.
It's just a crazy.
Yeah,
it's a
crazy.
crazy. How did you know how to get back just on the main, like, road?
Yeah.
Like, you just assumed there would be cell coverage? That's crazy.
Quick question: when they went out there, did they find anybody while they were out there? Did they access anybody while you were waiting for him to come back and everything? Did they come back with any intel? With, hey, I found somebody. What?
At one point, so when I got radio contact with them, their leader was like nearby. I said, "Hey, I got him," and he told me to ask where they were, and so I did, and to tell them. And he was calling them on his radio. He finally somehow barely got them, and he was telling them to come back. And because at this point he had already, like, told me to stop talking to them. He's getting a little pissy with me because,
they're my boys.
Yeah, and I'm just like, okay, all right. So I just sat on my radio and I just listened to the traffic, and they said that they were at some point that they were picking up. They had found some locals and they were giving them a ride to their home up the hill, and he was shouting into his radio, going like what? Say again, because his it's a shitty little antenna. He can't hear them. I can hear what they're saying, and so I told him, hey, they picked up some locals. They're giving them a ride. It's like, and then that's at the point where he told me to stop talking to them. And I was like,
listening to my comms.
I said, I'm just doing radio operator shit, dude.
What's
and
government
anyway,
government employee.
Get off my comms. Get off my comms. Yeah.
Hey, don't you lump us all in there. Hey, I'm that too. Some of us are actually kind of squared away. I like to think I am, at least.
I love that they. It's interesting that they would change they go to 18 to 20 and just not tell you.
I guess they didn't want us listening to them. I don't know.
Probably 100%.
I have two main questions right now bouncing around in my brain box here.
Go.
Number one, what worked better, the Jeep or the Tacoma? And then number two, what was like the biggest failing point that you kind of saw going on there? Like we were talking about these guys and like their unpreparedness. What was the biggest like failure between the disaster tourists or what was going on the ground?
Okay. First, Jeep or Tacoma. The Jeep was in less danger of getting stuck. Neither vehicles got stuck while we were out there, but the Tacoma was more useful because I actually had a bed that I could transport supplies in. So we took both with us, but we couldn't put nearly as much stuff in the Jeep, so it wasn't as efficient for the amount of fuel it was using.
Gotcha.
It did have a bigger tank than mine. Like my dude in his Jeep had like a 20-gallon gas tank, and I had 15, so I had to refuel a little more often. So there's that. Sorry, could you rephrase the second part of that question for me?
Yeah, my curiosity is, what was the biggest, I guess, drawback, failure? What was the biggest lacking on the ground that you saw going on, whether it was between the officials down there, the community, or the people coming to help? Like, what was like the biggest, like, you're looking at and you're going, this is fucked?
And I could kind of add to that, if you could just wave a magic wand and make certain things better, what would they be? Right.
That's good.
Well, besides just deleting the hurricane, I guess.
That's a pretty good answer.
So,
That's a great answer.
That's a great answer.
The
Yeah,
government made the
yeah,
hurricane.
I mean, yeah. So I guess I'm just going to go through all of the things that were causing issues and just what I wanted most. Disaster tourists, they were a nuisance. They were only actually caused us problem one time when we had a car that was clearly, it was like Maryland plates. It's a Honda CRV. So it's not, clearly doesn't really have much business being out here. And there was like 3 young ladies in it, and they were going really slow on the roads as we're trying to get back to the church from the whole fiasco in Pensacola. They're going really slow on this lane that we cannot pass them on, and they just like sticking their phones out the window, taking photos of everything. And that was more frustrating than it was an actual problem. But they were going through an area that was very congested, that had National Guardsmen and state troopers and us and God knows who else who actually had business there, and they were just adding unnecessary traffic. So they were a nuisance. And I believe they are the stated reason why the roadblocks are in place in the first place. Whether or not that's true, don't know, but I can kind of see some truth in it. FEMA, apart from that one incident, didn't bother us at all. Like I said, they don't have personnel on the ground to actually intercept shipments and whatnot, hunt people down, like arrest people for bringing in supplies. Although it does make for some funny memes, I'm not going to lie. The biggest obstacle, so we had a lot of people come to help, volunteer wise, and God bless them. I guess the biggest problem with folks coming in to help was they had out of date information as to what was actually needed. People were still coming in even as late as like Friday, I think, with loads of food and water to distribute. But the fact of the matter was that by the end of the day, Wednesday, we didn't need that anymore. Like we had plenty of that, and we needed other stuff. People were also coming in Thursday and Friday and Saturday with chainsaws, asking what roads needed to be cleared. And the simple fact is, the first 3 days after the storm, 80% of the roads that could be cleared with chainsaws were already cleared by the locals, because they have that. The rest of it was cleared in the next day or two by volunteers who came in with chainsaws and first responders. And at that point, by the time these people were showing up, the only roads that needed clearing could only be cleared by bulldozers. And so it was, people were showing up, people were coming, they were late. I mean, I'm glad they showed up, but they weren't getting updated information as to what was actually needed. I was doing my damnedest to put that out there with the stuff I was putting out, which is like, if you're coming, come to this area. We need the logistics support. Please bring this type of item, which is what we actually need. And that information just wasn't making it to everybody. So some useless supplies were coming in. So there was that. People coming in. I didn't really have an issue with volunteers who were causing problems, other than the guys who thought they were high speed and really weren't. The roadblocks didn't cause us much problem, but only because we had a guide who was actually knew the area, knew where stuff needed to go, and was able to talk us through. If I had one more thing out there, I guess it would just be more people with vehicles and fuel to move stuff, because then we could have taken way more supplies per trip. We could have done, and it just would have been more efficient with our time, because we only had one guide. And so we do the trip in the convoy with however many vehicles we have, and that's it. For that same amount of time, the hour it took us to get to Poplar, the 40 minutes it took us to get to Pensacola, That's just, we had the vehicles we had when we left, and if we had more vehicles, it could have been way more efficient use of time to get more stuff out there. So that's what I was mainly asking for online. That's really it. I didn't really have, when it comes to authorities, actually, if we're going back to that, I never really had a problem with state or local authorities, like, ever. Drones, actually. So there's some story circulating early on that drone flights were grounded. That's true, but there was also a ton of helicopter traffic in the Burnsville, in the area we were at. There was like every type of helicopter you could imagine, fire, EMS, helicopters. You had all sorts of makes and models of privately owned helicopters. You had the National Guard coming in with Chinooks and Blackhawks, and even there was one group. I don't remember which group it was. It may have been Cajun Navy. It may not have been. But there was a no shit Vietnam War era Huey, one with the two rotors with the distinctive flying around doing resupply drops. And I saw it once out there. So there was a ton of helicopter traffic out there. I'm not surprised they didn't want to, risk those high expensive airframes and personnel smacking into some random person's DJI Phantom 4. So it's also, we were told during I did like an op sync with my dudes back home, live video feed, video chat using Starlink. One of the times they told us that Air Force One actually overflew the area on that day, and so that's probably another reason why there was why drones weren't allowed to fly, but mainly the helicopter traffic.
Got it. Did you end up? I'm kind of curious. Was Tim Kennedy wearing his cape while he was flying his helicopter, or was he?
Have I converted you?
Did he have his cape on or not? I'm just curious.
I never saw Tim Kennedy out there. I made contact with exactly one helicopter on the ground, and that's when we.
I was just curious because there was a headline that said Tim Kennedy saves North Carolina. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that you don't know our internal banter at all, but just you like being in the service, you're already on the team. You're already like,
we're already somewhat tuned in to each other.
That's great. And a hero podcast of doing the Lord's work.
I guess along with ridiculous questions, I was also going to ask if you saw any FEMA shipments that had if they said like final destination Eagles Pass or anything like that.
I never saw any. So the only government government shipments that I could identify were in National Guard vehicles. They had a couple of 5-ton trucks driving around, and the outside of those weren't marked. So can't confirm or deny any of that.
Yeah. So you said there was a lot of National Guard like towards the end of the trip, right? That's really when they started kind of replacing a lot of local police and things like that.
Yeah, I started seeing National Guard in the area like when we were moving in. There was a Blackhawk parked next to the Yancey County Fire Department alongside 95E on our way in, so we were seeing National Guard here and there. Once in a while, we'd see like a small convoy or like a Humvee driving around. In classic National Guard fashion, it's a soft top with all the doors missing, so we'd seen them around. We didn't see them actually making any sort of a security presence until Saturday. Remember that state police checkpoint we passed on the way in? On our way out, that state police checkpoint was the same trooper. It was a trooper was there with his vehicle, but there was also a Humvee with 4 dismounted National Guardsmen standing along the side of the road, 2 on the way in, 2 on the way out. I don't know to what extent they were being used. I think it was because people were running, just blowing past this trooper and not giving a damn. And so they were there for just an additional presence, at least the image of additional security. And on my way out of the area on Sunday, not that same intersection, but another one along 95E in vicinity of Burnsville on the western side, I saw a National Guard Humvee actually being used as a checkpoint. There was a Humvee blocking one lane of road as on the side of 95E to keep people from going off in that direction, not on 95 itself. There was a Humvee blocking one lane. There was a wooden barricade blocking the other lane. And there was a very bored looking National Guardsman sitting there on his phone next to it. So That's what it stepped up to by the time we actually left. So I do have a guy who until about 12 hours ago was still on the ground there, and he was sending me updates, and he was telling me the regular Army units had moved in as of yesterday.
Damn.
I asked him what unit. He said the 81st. Now this dude's not military. I don't know. I don't think that's accurate. I don't know what Army unit it is. I asked him to send me pictures or descriptions of like patches or vehicles or whatnot, and he couldn't give that to me.
I can only assume if it was in North Carolina, it was the 82nd. I can only.
I would assume that too. I said, "Are you sure it wasn't the 82nd?" But he said that regular Army units were coming in to the area in addition to National Guard, and they were like setting up their own distribution areas and staging areas and whatnot. That's now he's gone. I'm still trying to reach out to some other people in the area, like some of the ladies I worked with at the church. Trying to reach out to them to see if they have, if they have any more needs that I can get people to bring stuff in or just more help. But cell service is still really, really bad in the area, and so they haven't gotten back to me yet.
Gotcha. To kind of wrap this up here, do you guys have any more questions?
I was going to ask only one thing. I wanted to know just the general vibe of the civilians that were in the area. It was just really curious to see like the overall, obviously everybody's distraught. I'm just curious, like the activity. Are people kind of more sedentary? They're just sitting there kind of waiting for help. They're just kind of writing this out, or are most people being kind of proactive? They're out looking for food, looking for shelter, looking for water, kind of moving about, or is it mostly just kind of people sheltering in place and just kind of waiting the whole thing out? I mean, what are you noticing? What did you notice out there?
So there was a little bit of it was a mix, but I'd say more leaning towards the side of being active in the community. There was like on our convoys, it's not like these roads were desolate. There was normal-ish looking vehicle traffic moving around. We actually saw like we weren't the only ones who appeared to be traveling in convoys either. Those convoy ops is an interesting thing because I teach that in some like classes that I teach to civilians and whatnot on how to run convoys in case something like this ever happens. And now I actually got to do, I actually got a proof of concept. I actually got to do it in real life. And I actually just kind of saw people naturally traveling in groups of, to get places in a coordinated manner because cell phones weren't working. You got to keep track of all your people if you're going from point A to point B. So that just naturally happened a lot. But there was a significant amount of movement in the area. It looked like the community was fairly active. In some of the wellness checks, we encountered like older people and whatnot who couldn't leave their homes, or like there's just families hanging out near the homes doing stuff. So there was a mix. But by and large, what I saw was people were actively trying to do what they could to benefit their community until they could go back to normal lives. God only knows when that's going to be for them. So yeah, that's generally what it was. Like I said, these are some, by and large, like some really, really great people. There's a couple of scumbags out there that ruin it for everybody, like the guys trying to break into people's homes and burglarize and loot. And one of the things I don't understand about that is, actually I do. These people, there's so much free stuff. Like you don't need to steal anything to get by. Every church that is not destroyed is a distribution point. Like you can just walk up and get whatever you want. The one I was operating out of was so organized. They had like the pews inside the sanctuary were all loaded up with food and diapers, and it was organized. And they had a system by which people would come in, grab a shopping cart, go down one aisle, grab what they needed, come back up the other aisle, grab the other stuff they needed, load the shopping carts into their car, and put it back in. So you could get what you needed. The people who were looting were just trying to take advantage of stuff to try to see, if they could get valuable stuff that was left in homes that people had abandoned to flee the hurricane. One story that was told to me was a dude who was he said it sounded like guys were trying to case his house. At 3:30 a.m. there was a couple of individuals standing at the end of his driveway with flashlights, just kind of looking at his house. And when he opened his door, they scattered. So they're trying to see if the house is occupied so they could go in and try to loot. So there's always a couple of scumbags in every group of people, and this is true in military units and in regular civilian life as well. But by and large, these are really salt of the earth people, and most of the ones I interacted with were doing their damnedest to support their community and to try to do their part, their small part, to bring things back to normal. And I'm so honored and so thankful that I was able to be a part of trying to bring some normalcy back into these people's lives.
You have any more questions?
No, I didn't have a question. I just want to give you a compliment, dude. You're obviously incredibly intelligent, but you were really well spoken and very professional. You carried yourself extremely well. I think one of the biggest takeaways for people that want to go and provide assistance like what you're doing is to have the kind of pre-plan that you did, so that when you get there on ground, you're actually helpful. You had some great takeaways.
Oh, yeah.
Like, no one want help from a weirdo, stuff like that. Like it's very right, man. I think you got a great career in front of you doing this kind of stuff, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you. So appreciate you being
brother.
here.
Do you have any closing thoughts or anything else you want to say? Get off your chest, reveal to the audience.
Well, just I guess a couple of tips for in preparing for this sort of thing happening in your area. And I know Florida is about to get really, really hard. So this goes mainly out to the people in Florida, but also just everybody. Most people don't realize this, but almost every county in America has an emergency management plan that they publish. Normally it's online. So what folks can do watching this right now is like right after this interview, right after this podcast, go ahead and Google your county in your state emergency management. And you'll probably find a web page with your county's emergency management stuff, and it'll have either in written text or in a downloadable PDF the SOP for your county's emergency management. Now, some are more squared away than others. Now, I live on the coast in North Carolina. We got hit by Florence pretty hard in 2018. So I don't know if it was squared away before that or if that was a wake-up call and they just really locked it down. But my county's emergency management plan is really, really watertight. It lists everything, where shelters are going to be, where how they're going to distribute food, what authorities are going to be delegated to what public officials, who gets to pick when curfews are put into effect, how they're going to utilize the local ham radio club as backup communications if the repeaters go down for the P25 radios that law enforcement and first responders use. That's all in there. For the most part. Mine actually alludes to police setting up checkpoints and whatnot. It doesn't say where. And I noticed that when I downloaded it, the file name said emergency management SOP, and then in parentheses, public copy.
Yeah.
So implying the existence of, another more thorough document that I don't have access to. But anyways, that aside, almost all counties have that. If yours doesn't, then get on your county officials to get their heads out of their ass and actually make one of those, because if not, then it's going to take an actual disaster before they wake up and do it. But that's something you can do right now. Download that, search for that, find that in your county, and you can see what that posture is going to look like even before something happens. Then you're not trying to play catch up and finding out where the first responders are and what neighborhoods they're going to first, what roads are going to be blocked off, etc. So there's that. Just get to know your neighbors, like now. Make good friends, and if you're into the whole training thing, like the tactical training world, like we are, you need a team. You need a team of dudes. I wasn't doing this stuff. My team was doing this stuff. I was just the lead coordinator for all of it. I wouldn't have been even 20% as effective as I was out there, as we were out there, if it wasn't for my A driver who drove us out there so I could still continue doing intel prep and coordination and phone calls and stuff from the passenger seat en route there. If I didn't have the other guy in the Jeep helping me coordinate the convoys, if I didn't have my couple of dudes back home running my remote intel section, feeding us information in real time and supporting us from afar as best they could, if I didn't have all of that, I would have just randomly showed up and I would have been lost. So get a group, take your group. Everybody has a group of friends that likes to talk about this stuff. If no one's taking the initiative to actually get y'all squared away, get you working towards a common goal, then it's on you. All right. It's on you to become the team leader. Get your guys squared away, get them training, get them define a common goal. This is what we're preparing to do. This is what we're training for. And then you can start working towards that. And I will do just a little bit of a plug here. I teach team leader classes where I teach people how to organize and run a group like this. And I think this is as good a case of any is to show why this sort of thing is important because of the impact we were able to have. So that's all I got for you, gentlemen.
Absolutely. Mention all of your things. Plug yourself all the way, brother. Like Twitter, website, all of it.
Okay. Well, I really didn't want to plug my stuff too much because it feels like I'm making money off of the suffering of other people, and I really don't want to do that. But so I guess okay. I have a website. I have a website. I have a Twitter. You guys can link it if you want to. If you guys want to check out my stuff, awesome.
Yeah, well, I think that it's less about making money and more about it's just people being prepared, and that's what you're trying to help people do. And I completely understand that. At the end of the day, we're all trying to make a living, but at the same time, like, you're doing something that is absolutely crucial to people's survival in the future, whether it be a hurricane or whether it just be someone trying to drop some bombs on the country and then everybody fucking going their different directions and leaving their homes. So regardless, I think it's important, even if the FBI has designated that type of training as terrorist activities. So
we might have to go be terrorists.
Right.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much, brother. Thank you so much for spending this time with us and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and telling us all about this. We really, really appreciate it, man.
Thank you. And you're a stand-up individual, man. I agree. It was a pleasure to sit here with you for the last hour and a half, 2 hours.
And thank you, gentlemen. It was an honor to be able to come in here and talk with you, gentlemen, and try to get this information out to people who can make good use of it.
Awesome. Appreciate that, brother.